Hey, good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? This your boy, Rob Thomas Jr., and this is the real news behind the news. Yeah, today is August 29th, 2019. And briefly, we want to talk about the opioid crisis and how it relates or compares to the crack cocaine epidemic. Notice the two words. One of them is called a crisis. The other one was called an epidemic. Now, basically, what happens here now, recently Johnson & Johnson, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, just got hit with a $500 million lawsuit because they was actually producing all these opioids and got all them poor little white children hooked on it. You know what I'm saying? So now you got these white children hooked on these opioids. Hold on a second, y'all. Okay. Now that you got all these poor little white children hooked on these bad drugs, it has become a crisis. But let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to the late 80s, the mid 80s up into the 90s, when we had the crack cocaine epidemic. What was happening again, back then you had the CIA, who was responsible for bringing all this cocaine here from South America. They was trying to figure out a way to subvert a lot of social groups that was speaking out against power. So they were basically trying to come up with a way to make cocaine affordable to these people so that they could make them pretty much null and void. Well, one researcher came up with crack cocaine. Now, this crack cocaine was heavily flooded in the black communities. Now, once they flooded the cocaine into the black communities, the black people started going to jail in record numbers. They even found a way to facilitate the imprisonment of black people during the cocaine epidemic, the crack epidemic, by the 3-strike law, which was created by Bill and Hillary Clinton. Because what was happening was so many people was getting caught with this crack, and it created so many other crimes that they was like, screw this, man. This crack cocaine epidemic is ruining the fabrics of our good old society here in America. So we can't afford to build no more rehabilitation centers because the demand is too overwhelming. So what we got to do is build more prisons. We're going to incarcerate to the fullest extent of the law anybody that get caught selling crack cocaine or get caught with crack cocaine. So they start sending black men and women to jail in record numbers during the crack epidemic. Again, the CIA was responsible for it. So how can we sue the CIA? First of all, how can we really prove it? Even though we know and all the facts point to this, it would never stand up in a court of law. Now, fast forward back up into the modern day time. Now that little Susie and little Penelope are out here sucking peanuts for chicken and, Oxycontin, man, we have a crisis on our hand. We can't incarcerate our way out of this situation. We have to build more rehabilitation centers and have more training for these pharmaceutical companies who are nothing more than drug dealers, for these pharmaceutical companies, and let them know that they're harming the fabric of our society. Notice the two solutions that they had. When it was crack cocaine in our neighborhoods, man, we got to send these Negroes to jail in record numbers. Now that the opioid crisis is destroying their neighborhoods, we got to have compassion for this situation. We cannot lock people up as a way of solving this problem. So that leads me to ask the question, and it's not being insensitive or heartless, but black people, should we give a damn about the opioid crisis? I mean, you got quite a few black people hooked on opioids now themselves. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of the rehabilitation centers are not accessible to us because we don't have those lucrative health insurance policies where we can go stay for $2,000 a night at one of these rehabilitation centers. So basically, there's a big hypocrisy in the way that these two drugs have been dealt with. When it was us with the epidemic, we started going to jail in record numbers. Now it's them with their crisis. They're building new and more modern rehabilitation centers. It goes to show that there is a systematic plan of white supremacy and racism, and it reaches over to us in a way that is so evil and diabolical, man. It really borders on satanic. The way that they basically implemented the drugs into our neighborhood and then sent us to prison. And now that their roosters come back, karma has come back around. Now that their kids are getting hooked on these drugs, they want to basically rehabilitate their way out this problem. Man, it is crazy how we can sit back, man, and watch Johnson & Johnson get a slap on the wrist. Because think about it. The heads of Johnson & Johnson, it coming out that all these pharmaceutical companies knew what their products was doing. They knew how dangerous their products was. And they continue to produce them by the tens of millions on an annual basis. Getting all these people hooked on dope, on these Oxycontins and on these Loratabs. Now that they hooked on these Loratabs and Oxycontin, they get caught, they get found out. Guess what? They get a $500 million lawsuit slapped against them. When in reality, they done made tens or hundreds of billions. And nobody went to jail. But again, you got people right now still doing time. From back in 82, 80, 87, 88, I know people right now, man, doing 30, 40-year stretches behind crack cocaine, man. And they now head from there. Neither one of these pharmaceutical companies is even looking at jail time. It's crazy, it's hypocritical, but it's real. There is a difference between the crack cocaine epidemic and the opioid crisis. And the difference is black people didn't stand a chance, because it was deliberately brought up on us by our government. And now that the pharmaceutical, and a lot of these doctors are dealing drugs through these opioids, you know what I'm saying? It's a crisis that we need to have compassion about. Man, it's crazy. Y'all be blessed.